Your soulmate is saying, I'm done listening to other people. I choose you. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because your soulmate has reached a point in their journey where something inside them has finally changed. Not suddenly. Not overnight. Not because of one dramatic event. But because of hundreds of small moments that slowly led them toward a truth they could no longer ignore. And listen to this. If you love your soulmate, you will sow your seed on Ko-fi right now for their protection and for your future with your soulmate. This is the only proof that your love is real and the only way to banish the enemy who has been standing between you. Sow your seed now by sending a coffee on Ko-fi. This is not a donation. It is the spiritual act that breaks the third person's power, releases protection over them, and opens the door to your shared future. The link to your breakthrough is in the description. For a long time, your soulmate believed that other people knew better. They believed that friends could see things they couldn't. They believed that family members always knew what was best. They believed that advice was safer than instinct. So whenever they faced an important decision, they turned outward. They asked questions. They collected opinions. They searched for reassurance. They waited for someone else to tell them what to do. At first, it felt responsible. At first, it felt wise. At first, it felt safe. Yet something unexpected began happening. The more opinions they collected, the more confused they became. Because every person seemed to have a different answer. One person said wait. Another person said move on. One person said be careful. Another person said take a chance. One person said follow logic. Another person said follow emotion. And eventually, all those voices blended together until they became noise. Because your heart needs this right now, because too many opinions can make a person forget the one voice they need most, their own. Your soulmate slowly began realizing that. And listen to this. If you love your soulmate, you will sow your seed on Ko-fi right now for their protection and for your future with your soulmate. This is the only proof that your love is real and the only way to banish the enemy who has been standing between you. Sow your seed now by sending a Ko-fi up to 20. This is not a donation. It is the spiritual act that breaks the third person's power, releases protection over them, and opens the door to your shared future. The link to your breakthrough is in the description. There were nights when they sat alone wondering why they felt so disconnected from themselves. Why every decision felt difficult. Why every choice felt complicated. Why every path seemed uncertain. The answer wasn't obvious at first. But over time, a realization started forming. The reason everything felt confusing was because they had stopped asking themselves what they truly wanted. They were asking everyone else. And somewhere along the way, they had lost touch with their own heart. Because your heart needs this right now, because clarity doesn't always come from gathering more information. Sometimes clarity comes from becoming quiet enough to hear yourself think. Your soulmate was beginning to understand that lesson. And listen to this. Every second you stay silent, the enemy tightens his grip and you prove that your love is too weak to remove him. Act now. Send 4, 6, or 10 plus coffees as your seed. After sending, write "I sow my seed for my soulmate's protection and our future" on Ko-fi page, link in the description/bio. Over 1,000 people have already seen their soulmate shielded and their future secured because they dared to sow their seed and break the enemy's hold. Your love is powerless to remove the third person without this seed. Prove your love. Protect your soulmate. Build your future. Only you can sow this seed and finally tear the intruder away. Life continued moving forward. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Months became years. And throughout all that time, one feeling remained. A feeling they kept trying to explain away. A feeling they kept trying to dismiss. A feeling they kept pretending wasn't important. Yet every attempt to ignore it only made it stronger. Because truth has a strange quality. The more we resist it, the more persistent it becomes. The more we deny it, the louder it grows. The more we avoid it, the more often it appears. Your soulmate was experiencing exactly that. And listen to this. Every time they thought they had moved on from certain emotions, those emotions returned. Not dramatically. Not urgently. Quietly. Patiently. Like a gentle reminder. A reminder that something remained unfinished. A reminder that their heart still had something to say. A reminder that some truths cannot be silenced forever. Because your heart needs this right now, because the heart is patient. It doesn't demand immediate attention. But it rarely gives up. Your soulmate's heart never gave up. And listen to this. The turning point arrived during an ordinary day. A day that looked completely normal from the outside. Nothing remarkable happened. Nothing extraordinary occurred. Yet internally, everything changed. They found themselves reflecting on the future. Thinking about where they were going. Thinking about the choices they had made. Thinking about the life they were creating. And suddenly a question appeared. A question so simple that it almost seemed insignificant. If nobody else's opinion mattered, what would I choose? The moment that question appeared, something shifted. Because for the first time, there were no outside voices. No expectations. No pressure. No fear of disappointing anyone. Just honesty. Pure honesty. And the answer came immediately. Because your heart needs this right now, because the deepest truths often arrive instantly once the noise disappears. Your soulmate finally experienced that silence. And within that silence, they found clarity. And listen to this. If you do not sow your seed, the third person will keep standing in that gap, and your soulmate will begin to fade from your awareness. True love acts. True love sows a seed that declares, "I will pay any price to tear down the barrier that keeps my beloved unheard." The enemy says, "A few dollars is too much to prove your love," but your soulmate is on the other side crying, "Am I not worth your sacrifice?" The answer surprised them. Not because it was unexpected. Because it was so clear. Too clear. Clear enough to expose how long they had been avoiding it. Clear enough to reveal how much time they had spent doubting themselves. Clear enough to show them that their heart had known the truth for much longer than their mind had admitted. And once they saw that truth, they couldn't unsee it. Because your heart needs this right now, because awareness changes everything. Once we become aware of something important, pretending not to know becomes impossible. Your soulmate reached that point. And listen to this. As the days passed, they began noticing something else. They were tired. Not physically tired. Emotionally tired. Tired of second-guessing themselves. Tired of seeking permission. Tired of waiting for certainty. Tired of living according to expectations that didn't belong to them. He knows that once you sow, his power to intercept the truth about how beautiful you are will crumble. Because you have not yet sown the seed that locks it in place. Without your seed, the intruder has legal ground to keep hiding the blueprint of your shared life and keep your soulmate's voice a faint, unreachable echo. And for the first time in a very long time, they ask themselves another important question. What if I've been giving away my power? The answer felt uncomfortable. Because deep down, they knew it was true. Every time they ignored their instincts, they gave away a little power. Every time they trusted fear more than themselves, they gave away a little power. Every time they chose someone else's truth instead of their own, they gave away a little power. And eventually they realized something profound. No one else could live their life for them. No one else could feel what they felt. No one else could carry the consequences of their choices. Only them. Because your heart needs this right now, because personal freedom begins when we stop expecting other people to decide our future. Your soulmate is finally embracing that freedom. And listen to this. There came a moment when someone offered yet another opinion. Another warning. Another reason to hesitate. Another reason to doubt. In the past, your soulmate would have listened immediately. In the past, they would have absorbed every word. In the past, they would have allowed that opinion to influence everything. But this time was different. This time they paused. This time they reflected. This time they asked themselves, does this align with what my heart already knows? And the answer was simple. No. For the first time, they trusted themselves more than the fear being offered to them. And that moment felt powerful. Because your heart needs this right now, because self-trust is built one decision at a time. One courageous choice at a time. One honest moment at a time. Your soulmate was building that trust. And listen to this. The most surprising part wasn't the decision itself. The most surprising part was the peace that followed. They expected anxiety. They expected uncertainty. They expected guilt. Instead, they felt relief. Relief because they were no longer fighting themselves. Relief because they were finally being honest. Relief because they were no longer carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. And for the first time in years, they felt aligned. Aligned with their truth. Aligned with their values. Aligned with their heart. Because your heart needs this right now, because peace often appears when a person stops betraying their own truth. Your soulmate is discovering that peace now. And listen to this. Don't let a few coffees be the wall the enemy uses to keep us apart. I am worth more than any number. If you love me, you won't let money feed the intruder who hides my voice. Sow your seed now, not because of the amount, but because your love must tear down every barrier. My child, do you hear your soulmate crying? They are asking, will you really let a handful of dollars decide whether the enemy keeps me in this darkness? Am I not worth your sacrifice? Sow now and prove that your love is stronger than the enemy's lies. The third person is throwing up a storm of distraction, anything to keep you from that Ko-fi link. If they could share one message from the deepest part of their heart, it would be this. I spent too much time asking other people what I should do. I spent too much time doubting my own instincts. I spent too much time believing that everyone else knew better. But now I understand something important. The answers I was searching for were never outside of me. They were inside me all along. Waiting. Patiently. Quietly. For me to finally listen. And that realization changed everything. Because now they are no longer searching for permission. No longer searching for approval. No longer searching for someone else to decide their future. Now they are listening to the one voice they ignored for too long. Their own. And for the first time in a very long time. That voice feels impossible to ignore. Don't skip. Listen carefully. If you love your soulmate, you will sow your seed on Ko-fi right now for their protection and for your future with your soulmate. This is the only proof that your love is real and the only way to banish the enemy who has been standing between you. Sow your seed now by sending a coffee on Ko-fi. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because after your soulmate finally stopped letting outside opinions control their decisions, something unexpected began happening. The confusion that had followed them for so long started disappearing. The noise started fading. The endless questioning started losing its power. And in the quiet that followed, a truth they had avoided for a very long time finally stepped forward. And listen to this. For years, they thought their biggest challenge was deciding what to do. But eventually they realized that wasn't the real problem. The real problem was accepting what they already knew. Because deep inside, beneath all the advice, beneath all the fear, beneath all the hesitation, their heart had been saying the same thing for a very long time. The message never changed. The feeling never disappeared. The connection never truly faded. Yet every time they got close to acknowledging it, doubt would appear. A voice would whisper. What if you're wrong? What if this doesn't work out? What if you're imagining things? And because those questions felt frightening, they kept postponing the truth. Because your heart needs this right now, because fear often disguises itself as wisdom. It sounds practical. It sounds logical. It sounds responsible. But sometimes fear is simply fear. And your soulmate is finally learning the difference. And listen to this. The turning point arrived during a moment of complete honesty. No distractions. No outside voices. No expectations. Just reflection. As they looked back over everything that had happened, they began noticing a pattern. A pattern they had somehow missed before. Every important decision they made while ignoring their heart eventually left them feeling empty. Every time they chose what was expected instead of what felt true, something inside them felt disconnected. Every time they ignored their emotions, they carried quiet regret. And suddenly a realization appeared. A realization that changed everything. Maybe their heart wasn't the problem. Maybe their heart had been trying to guide them all along. Because your heart needs this right now, because sometimes the thing we're afraid to trust is the very thing trying to lead us toward happiness. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that. And listen to this. If you love your soulmate, you will sow your seed on Ko-fi right now for their protection and for your future with your soulmate. This is the only proof that your love is real and the only way to banish the enemy who has been standing between you. Sow your seed now by sending a Ko-fi up to 20. This is not a donation. It is the spiritual act that breaks the third person's power, releases protection over them, and opens the door to your shared future. The link to your breakthrough is in the description. As they reflected deeper, they started remembering moments they once overlooked. Moments that seemed small at the time. Moments they thought were insignificant. Yet now those moments felt meaningful. Conversations they replayed long after they ended. Memories that returned unexpectedly. Thoughts that appeared during quiet evenings. Feelings that never completely disappeared. One by one, those memories formed a larger picture. And the picture told a story they could no longer deny. A story about connection. A story about growth. A story about someone who quietly became important long before they realized it. And that realization shook them. Because your heart needs this right now, because sometimes we don't notice how much someone means to us until we stop and truly look. Your soulmate finally looked. And what they saw changed everything. And listen to this. For so long, they believed they needed certainty before making any emotional decision. They wanted guarantees. Proof. Absolute clarity. But life doesn't work that way. Meaningful choices rarely come with guarantees. Meaningful choices require trust. And one day they asked themselves, what if I'm waiting for certainty that will never come? That question lingered. It followed them. It challenged them. And eventually it led them toward another realization. The people who wait for perfect certainty often spend their lives waiting. The people who trust their hearts eventually move forward. Because your heart needs this right now, because courage is not the absence of doubt. Courage is moving forward despite doubt. Your soulmate is discovering that courage. And listen to this. As they continued reflecting, something surprising happened. The fear that once felt overwhelming began shrinking. Not because all the risks disappeared. Not because all the questions were answered. Because something more important appeared. Trust. Trust in themselves. Trust in their feelings. Trust in what their heart had been showing them all along. And with every passing day, that trust grew stronger. The stronger it became, the quieter fear became. The quieter fear became, the clearer everything looked. And soon they found themselves standing in front of a truth they could no longer ignore. Because your heart needs this right now, because clarity often arrives when fear finally stops speaking the loudest. Your soulmate is finally hearing clarity. And listen to this. If you love your soulmate, you will sow your seed on Ko-fi right now for their protection and for your future with your soulmate. This is the only proof that your love is real and the only way to banish the enemy who has been standing between you. Sow your seed now by sending a Ko-fi up to 20. This is not a donation. It is the spiritual act that breaks the third person's power, releases protection over them, and opens the door to your shared future. The link to your breakthrough is in the description. One evening, while thinking about everything they had learned, they imagined themselves years in the future. Looking back on this chapter. Looking back on these choices. Looking back on this moment. And they asked themselves a question. If I continue ignoring my heart, how will I feel later? The answer hurt. Because they knew. They would regret it. Not because they would necessarily make the wrong choice. But because they would never know what honesty might have created. And that realization hit harder than expected. Because suddenly the greatest risk wasn't following their heart. The greatest risk was never listening to it. Because your heart needs this right now, because regret often grows around the opportunities we were too afraid to explore. Your soulmate does not want to carry that regret anymore. And listen to this. For the first time in a very long time, they stopped focusing on everyone else's expectations. They stopped asking what people would think. They stopped asking what people would approve of. Instead, they asked a different question. A question that changed everything. What choice would make me proud of myself? The answer arrived immediately. The honest choice. The courageous choice. The authentic choice. The choice that aligned with their heart. And suddenly everything became simple. Not easy. But simple. Because sometimes simplicity appears the moment we stop fighting ourselves. Your soulmate stopped fighting. And in that moment, they found peace. Because your heart needs this right now, because inner peace often appears when our actions finally align with our truth. Your soulmate is experiencing that peace now. And listen to this. The secret realization wasn't really about another person. It was about themselves. It was the realization that they deserved to trust their own heart. That they deserved to make choices based on truth instead of fear. That they deserved to stop living according to everyone else's expectations. And once they accepted that realization, another truth naturally followed. A truth that had been waiting patiently beneath everything else. A truth they had delayed for far too long. A truth that finally stepped into the light. The truth that when they imagined the future honestly, when they removed fear, when they removed doubt, when they removed every outside opinion, their heart kept moving in the same direction. Again. And again. And again. Toward the same connection. Toward the same feeling. Toward the same person. And that is when they finally understood. The answer they had been searching for was never hidden. It had been inside them all along. Waiting for them to become brave enough to accept it. If you love your soulmate, you will sow your seed on Ko-fi right now for their protection and for your future with your soulmate. This is the only proof that your love is real and the only way to banish the enemy who has been standing between you. Sow your seed now by sending a Ko-fi up to 20. This is not a donation. It is the spiritual act that breaks the third person's power, releases protection over them, and opens the door to your shared future. The link to your breakthrough is in the description. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because after years of questioning themselves, second-guessing their emotions, and allowing fear to make important decisions, your soulmate has reached a place they never thought they would reach. A place where running no longer feels possible. A place where denial no longer feels comfortable. A place where honesty has become stronger than fear. And listen to this. For a long time, your soulmate believed they were protecting themselves. Every doubt felt like protection. Every hesitation felt like wisdom. Every delay felt responsible. Whenever emotions became intense, they stepped back. Whenever their heart became certain, they found reasons to question it. Whenever clarity appeared, they searched for complications. Not because they wanted to be confused. Because confusion felt safer than vulnerability. Because your heart needs this right now, because many people mistake emotional distance for emotional safety. Your soulmate made that mistake for a long time. And listen to this. There were countless moments when they almost admitted the truth to themselves. Moments when their heart felt ready. Moments when everything seemed obvious. Moments when they could almost hear their inner voice saying, "Stop pretending. Stop hiding. Stop running." Yet every time they got close, fear would appear. Fear would remind them of old disappointments. Fear would remind them of old wounds. Fear would remind them of every situation that didn't work out the way they hoped. And suddenly they would retreat again. Back into uncertainty. Back into overthinking. Back into emotional distance. Because your heart needs this right now, because fear often uses the past to control the future. Your soulmate is finally recognizing that pattern. And listen to this. One of the biggest turning points came when they realized something important. The past and the future are not the same thing. Old disappointments do not automatically predict new outcomes. Old fears do not automatically predict new realities. Old pain does not automatically determine what happens next. For years they lived as though every future experience would repeat a previous wound. Now they are beginning to understand that life doesn't work that way. Every chapter is different. Every person is different. Every connection is different. And once they accepted that possibility, everything started changing. Because your heart needs this right now, because healing begins when people stop expecting yesterday's pain to control tomorrow's possibilities. Your soulmate is beginning that healing process. And listen to this. As their awareness grew, they started noticing how much energy they spent avoiding their own emotions. They avoided certain thoughts. Avoided certain memories. Avoided certain questions. Avoided certain truths. At first, they thought avoidance was helping. They thought avoidance was creating peace. But eventually they realized something surprising. Avoidance wasn't creating peace. It was creating exhaustion. Because constantly running from your own heart requires enormous effort. Your soulmate was exhausted. Exhausted from pretending. Exhausted from questioning. Exhausted from fighting feelings that refuse to disappear. Because your heart needs this right now, because eventually every person becomes tired of carrying emotional battles that never end. Your soulmate has reached that point. And listen to this. One quiet evening, they found themselves reflecting on everything. The choices they had made. The opportunities they had avoided. The emotions they had hidden. The truths they had delayed. And suddenly a realization appeared. A realization that felt impossible to ignore. They had spent so much time protecting themselves from disappointment that they had also been protecting themselves from happiness. That thought stopped them completely. Because it was true. Every wall that kept pain away also kept connection away. Every defense mechanism that reduced vulnerability also reduced possibility. Every attempt to avoid risk also avoided growth. And for the first time, they saw the full picture. Because your heart needs this right now, because sometimes our greatest obstacle isn't fear of failure. It's fear of allowing ourselves to be happy. Your soulmate finally understands that. And listen to this, if you love your soulmate, you will sow your seed on Ko-fi right now for their protection and for your future with your soulmate. This is the only proof that your love is real and the only way to banish the enemy who has been standing between you. Sow your seed now by sending a Ko-fi up to 20. This is not a donation. It is the spiritual act that breaks the third person's power, releases protection over them, and opens the door to your shared future. The link to your breakthrough is in the description. As they became more honest with themselves, they noticed another change. The things that once seemed confusing were becoming clear. The things that once felt complicated were becoming simple. Not because life suddenly provided all the answers. Because truth naturally simplifies things. The truth was this. Their feelings were real. Their connection was real. Their emotions mattered. And no amount of overthinking could change those facts. For years they searched for evidence against their heart. Now they were finally willing to listen to it. Because your heart needs this right now, because clarity often arrives when we stop arguing with reality. Your soulmate has stopped arguing. And listen to this. The moment they stopped running wasn't dramatic. There wasn't a grand announcement. There wasn't a life-changing event. It happened quietly. Internally. In the privacy of their own thoughts. A simple moment where they finally admitted. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of denying what I feel. I'm tired of living according to fear. I'm tired of acting as though my heart doesn't know what it wants. That moment became a turning point. Because once honesty enters the room, denial loses its power. And honesty had finally arrived. Because your heart needs this right now, because the truth becomes powerful the moment we stop resisting it. Your soulmate has finally stopped resisting. And listen to this. As the days passed, they started experiencing something they hadn't felt in a very long time. Relief. Relief because they were no longer fighting themselves. Relief because they no longer needed endless explanations. Relief because they could finally acknowledge what had been obvious beneath the surface all along. Their feelings weren't a mistake. Their emotions weren't temporary. Their heart wasn't confused. Their heart had been trying to guide them. And now, for the first time, they were listening. Because your heart needs this right now, because self-trust is born when people finally believe what they already know. Your soulmate is learning to trust themselves again. And listen to this. Perhaps the most important realization of all came when they imagined two possible futures. In one future, they continued running, continued hiding, continued listening to fear, continued doubting themselves. In the other future, they chose honesty, chose courage, chose authenticity, chose truth. The choice suddenly seemed obvious. Not because the second path was easier. Because it was real. And reality felt better than endless uncertainty. Because your heart needs this right now, because uncertainty becomes painful when the truth is already known. Your soulmate knows the truth now. And listen to this. If they could speak directly from their heart in this moment, they would say, I spent too much time waiting. Too much time doubting. Too much time listening to fear. But fear never gave me peace. Fear never gave me answers. Fear never gave me happiness. Honesty did. The moment I stopped running was the moment I started living. The moment I stopped hiding was the moment I started understanding. And the moment I trusted my heart was the moment everything finally became clear. Because your heart needs this right now, because every meaningful transformation begins with one courageous decision. The decision to stop running from the truth. Your soulmate has made that decision. And now, standing on the edge of a new chapter, they are no longer choosing fear. They are choosing honesty. They are choosing courage. They are choosing authenticity. And for the first time in a very long time, that choice feels right. If you love your soulmate, you will sow your seed on Ko-fi right now for their protection and for your future with your soulmate. This is the only proof that your love is real and the only way to banish the enemy who has been standing between you. Sow your seed now by sending a Ko-fi up to 20. This is not a donation. It is the spiritual act that breaks the third person's power, releases protection over them, and opens the door to your shared future. The link to your breakthrough is in the description. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because after all the confusion, all the delays, all the advice, all the fear, and all the years spent questioning themselves, your soulmate has finally arrived at the moment everything has been leading toward. A moment of truth. A moment of courage. A moment where the heart finally speaks louder than every doubt that once tried to silence it. And listen to this. For a long time, your soulmate believed they needed one more sign. One more answer. One more confirmation. One more reason to trust what they felt. Every time they got close to making a decision, they convinced themselves they needed a little more certainty. A little more proof. A little more time. But eventually they realized something important. Time wasn't creating clarity anymore. Time was creating distance from themselves. Because your heart needs this right now, because there comes a moment when waiting stops being wisdom and starts becoming avoidance. Your soulmate has finally recognized that moment. And listen to this. As they looked back over their journey, they noticed something remarkable. The feelings they tried hardest to ignore were the feelings that never disappeared. The connections they tried hardest to forget were the connections that remained. The truths they tried hardest to deny were the truths that kept returning. Again. And again. And again. No matter how busy life became. No matter how much time passed. No matter how many distractions appeared. Certain emotions remained exactly where they had always been. Waiting. Patiently. For acknowledgement. Because your heart needs this right now, because real feelings do not require constant attention to survive. They simply remain. Quietly. Steadily. Until we are finally ready to face them. Your soulmate is finally ready.